Hello, my friends, hello, and welcome once again to Stately Vaughan Manor, where Roger and I have returned. Because it's Wednesday. That means it's Epic Comic Book Wednesday. Every Wednesday, we'll talk about a certain comic book, graphic novel, or comic book subject. Steve Donoghue, over on his channel, will talk about the same comic book, graphic novel, or comic book subject. It is our world's finest team-up that we do once a week. And this week, we have something very exciting for you today. This week, we're talking about my favorite superhero of all time, the greatest superhero of all time. Some people will say he's not the greatest, but they're all wrong. It is Superman, the greatest superhero of all time. And today, we're going to be talking about the beginning, the very beginning of the Silver Age for Superman. So, I've been reading lately a lot of Golden Age Superman, but I finally got this fantastic omnibus in the mail. This is the Silver Age Omnibus Volume 1 for Superman. And I have literally been waiting for this book for years. For years. And it's finally here. And it needs to be here because this book contains the greatest adventures of Superman ever. I'm a big fan of the Silver Age Superman. I love Superman. I love most eras of Superman. Most. The new 52, not so much. But most eras of Superman I really like. And I love this stuff, the Silver Age Superman. And, you know, the different ages for comic books can be a little tricky, you know. Most comic book historians, there are such things, you know, comic book historians, they're real. Most comic book historians believe that the Silver Age arrived on the scene along with the Flash, the newer version of the Flash in the red suit, the one we're familiar with. The Flash was a Golden Age character, but they completely changed the character of the Flash, made him a new guy, put a new suit on him, gave him a new origin, and then we had the Silver Age Flash. And the first issue that Flash appeared in, that was the beginning, basically, of the Silver Age. But it's not that cut and dry, because for every character that DC created, you know, each character seemed to have a different starting point for the Silver Age. Because it's a very nebulous thing. Originally, when comic book fans came up with the idea of a Golden Age and a Silver Age, and later on a Bronze Age and a Modern Age, or whatever the hell you want to call it after that, you know, it wasn't an official thing, but eventually enough comic book fans started using these terms that now it's kind of official. Only there's no official starting date for all of the different characters. With Marvel, of course, it was Fantastic Four issue number 1. So for Marvel, it's easy. But for DC characters, it could be a little tricky. But DC Comics has decided on an official starting point for Superman's Silver Age adventures. And I know that they've officially decided it because not only does this book start off with it, but their older edition of Showcase Presents starts off with the same adventures. So DC Comics must think that Superman's Silver Age adventures officially started with this particular comic. And this particular comic is Action Comics, issue 241. Issue 241 from June 1958. And the story is the SuperKey to Fort Superman, which was written by Jerry Coleman, had pencils by Wayne Boring, and inks by Stan Kay. And I can't remember when I first read that story. It might have been in here. It might have been in this showcase. I'll have to check if it's in my best of Superman adventures, because if it is, that's where I first read it. But I did read it in this. But now I've got this, and it starts off with that magnificent tale, which we are going to talk about today after that very long preamble. The SuperKey to Fort Superman. Look at that fantastic cover where Superman uses the gigantic key to open the Fortress of Solitude. Yes, this is the first issue with the Fortress of Solitude. Now, it should be admitted that Superman is not the first character with a Fortress of Solitude. That honor goes to Doc Savage. Doc Savage from the pulp magazines, who in many ways was kind of a prototype to Superman and Batman, kind of. But Doc Savage from the pulps, one of my favorite characters of all time, Doc Savage, he had a Fortress of Solitude before Superman ever did. So Superman, the super thief, stole the Fortress of Solitude. He stole it from Doc Savage, but he had his own Fortress of Solitude. And here's his big-ass diary that he's using his heat vision to record his thoughts on. Now, the story, the SuperKey to Fort Superman, is the very first Silver Age Superman comic. I don't know if it really had to be, but one thing is for sure. Right after this comic book, there were all kinds of, there's like a flood of stuff. And most of Superman's lore that we think of when we think of Superman comic books came from comic books that came within, you know, within the next 2 or 3 years, starting with this issue. And this issue brings us the Fortress of Solitude. And, you know, after this, we got like Lori Lamaris, and we get Kandor, the Bottled City of Kandor. We get all kinds of stuff in the Silver Age. I think Bizarro World, I think that came after this, Bizarro World. I mean, all kinds of stuff came after this. So the first Silver Age comic, SuperKey to Fort Superman. What the hell happens in this story anyway? Well, Superman has the Fortress of Solitude, which we see for the first time. Superman flies to his fortress. He has a key that is too gigantic and huge for anybody except Superman to use. And as Superman says here, from above, this looks like a luminous arrow marker to guide planes over this lonely region. No one would suspect it's really a key, a super key that weighs tons that no one else can lift. And so Superman goes over here, and from the sky, planes can't see this door, because it's, you know, there's an overhang there of stone and snow and stuff. But that's the door, that's the key, and that's how he gets into his Fortress of Solitude. And then he hangs up the key on the wall. Now, this is Superman's, you know, private place. Superman's, you know, Superman cave. Superman's, you know, that's where he goes to get away from it all and to make strange, creepy rooms where he puts statues of all his friends. Like, there's a statue of Lois Lane in the Lois Lane room. And he blew up this signed photograph to, like, gigantic proportions. That's not weird. And there's the Jimmy Olsen room with a hot rod. And Superman says, you know what, if I ever die, Jimmy Olsen is going to inherit this hot rod car. Now, how this car is going to get to Jimmy Olsen after Superman is dead, I mean, is he going to leave a super will? I don't know how this is going to happen. But it's interesting that this is even brought up. Yes, if Superman dies, Jimmy will get this as a gift from him. A handmade sports car made by Superman. So, one thing about the Silver Age comics is that Superman, who seems like an eternal character, does mention once in a while that, you know what, one day we might have a world without Superman. Superman could die. That could happen. And, you know, this is a subject that is brought up, you know, several times in the Silver Age Superman comic. And we even have a Batman room right there at the bottom. So at this period, Superman and Batman had the kind of relationship that Superman and Batman should have. They are best friends. They're pals. You know, Superman trusts Batman more than anybody else in the world. And he even has a Clark Kent room, because he figures if anyone busts in, he better have a Clark Kent room so nobody guesses that he's actually Clark Kent. And he has all kinds of other crazy rooms in here too. He has a bunch of trophies like Batman does. He has a whole zoo full of animals. They're kind of cramped in there, dude. Why? I don't know, Superman. That might not be so humane, keeping all of these animals in there. That's weird. And he has like laboratories where he works on deadly experiments with kryptonite. But Superman is up here anyway. He's up at the Fortress of Solitude, and he finds a message written on the wall of the Fortress of Solitude, a place where nobody should be. I'm going to spoil this whole story, just so you know. And here on the Fortress of Solitude wall, it says, prepare for your greatest puzzle. Prepare for the greatest puzzle of your career, Superman. And the message on the wall is, basically saying, hey, Superman, I know who you are, but who am I? So Superman knows that some criminal has access somehow to his Fortress of Solitude. But how did this criminal get in here? Nobody's strong enough at this point, in Superman's career. Nobody's strong enough to use that key to get inside the fortress. So how did this mysterious supervillain get in there? And where is he anyway? So Superman is really worried about this. And, he writes about it in his diary, in his big steel diary. He's not using his heat vision here. He's just using his finger in this picture. And he melts the door so that, the key can't be used just in case there is a super strong supervillain somewhere. And when he comes in later, he just busts through the wall and he has to repair it every time. That's inconvenient. And he just goes about his business, even though, he plays super chess. He does the Superman things that he does. But he knows that somewhere in here, or there could be this supervillain, or perhaps this supervillain has come back while he was gone. And sure enough, there's another message on the wall taunting Superman, taunting him. I know who you are, Superman. Who am I? How did I get in here? That kind of thing. So Superman's a mess, and he could barely, do his superheroing during the day. And at night in his apartment, he's having terrible, terrible nightmares. Poor Superman. He's really freaked out about this whole situation. And when he comes back, there's this statue of Clark Kent just hanging out. And there's a sign on the statue saying, Kent is Superman. I told you I knew. Now I have proved it. Tonight is your last chance to act. Now, so there is some mysterious character, some mysterious villainous character here, taunting Superman in his Fortress of Solitude. Who could it be? Who could it be? It's Batman. It's Batman. What a dick. Some friend he is. So Batman has been playing a practical joke on Superman. He has a reason why he's doing it. But Superman finds this out because Batman is hiding. And then there's suddenly this mysterious earthquake that just comes out of nowhere. And a piece of kryptonite just happens to fall out of the wall or something onto the floor, causing Superman to be tremendously weak. And so Batman runs out. So now the mystery is solved. It's been Batman the whole time taunting Superman. And this has gone on for like 3 days, by the way. And Superman is too weak to do anything. And Superman's like, ugh, it's Batman. And Batman's like, let's get out of here. And Superman's like, I can't. There's kryptonite here. I don't have the super strength to tunnel out. We're both going to die. We're both going to die, Batman. And Batman's like, he's like, well, this wasn't the brightest idea I ever had. This whole taunting Superman in the Fortress of Solitude. But Superman's like, I'm sorry you are the intruder because it means you must share my doom. However, let us face our fate bravely. As our last minutes draw to an end, tell me, how did you get in and why? That's a good question. Let's find this out. Very well, Superman. Remember that day years ago when I told you that my secret identity was Bruce Wayne and admitted you to the Batcave? You told me then that you were Clark Kent. Of course, says Superman. And I told you about my fortress. I never suspected you because I trusted you so completely. Maybe that trust was misplaced. And then Batman says, when I decided to break in here, I came to the mountaintop with an acetylene torch and some tools. And so what he does is he opens the top of Superman's SuperKey, which happens to be hollow. I don't know how Batman knew this, but it is. He makes himself a little door and he hides inside the key, which it must be freezing in there, but I guess he brought some bat-long underwear. And so when Superman uses the key and hangs it on the wall, Batman gets out and he proceeds to taunt Superman with these messages. And Superman starts laughing at him. And then Batman's like, why the hell are you laughing at me? There's Superman laughing at dumbass Batman. And Superman goes, sorry, Batman, I can't control myself any longer. You see, since you tricked me, I decided it was only fair for me to trick you. That kryptonite is phony, and the quake was caused by vibrations from a super clap of my hands. The rest of the fort is still unharmed. So this might seem like strange behavior from both Batman and Superman, but here's the thing. They used to mess with each other all the time. Batman and Superman were best friends, but they were always playing practical jokes on each other and tricking each other and keeping secrets from each other. They were always doing stuff like that. And I don't know if that's just the way male friendships were in the 1950s. I have no idea, but that's how Batman and Superman, that's kind of how they got along. And Superman's like, well, why did you come up with this whole idea anyway? And Batman says, you may not recall it, but today is the anniversary of your arrival on Earth from the planet Krypton. I wondered for a long time what to get you as a gift. What can one get Superman? I looked at all the stores for ideas, and this is the most Silver Age panel you'll ever see of Batman. Here is Batman in full costume shopping for Superman in a department store. He's just wandering around the department store, looking around for something to buy Superman. There's Batman shopping. Certainly something you would never see Batman do today. Can you imagine Batman just going to the store and in his Batman costume and browsing around? What are you doing? Hey, Batman, can I help you? No, man, I'm just browsing around looking for something to buy Superman. I don't know what to get Superman. But then Batman sees a puzzle. That's it, a puzzle. One that even Superman will find it hard to solve. And, you know, you would think Superman would be pissed, but no, Superman loves it. Because Superman and Batman are pals and they're always screwing with each other. And then they go back to the Batcave and have a giant cake, as one does in Gotham City, land of giant stuff. Of course, there's a giant cake there. So that was the very, very first Silver Age Superman story. Has a lot of Silver Age stuff in it. The Silver Age was interesting because, you know, this was in the dark days when the dreaded Comics Code Authority was in control, which prevented you from doing all kinds of fun things in comic books. And kept you from doing really fun things in comic books for years and years. So if you were a comic book writer, you had to come up with other ways than, like, I don't know, violence or monsters to make a good comic book. And so Superman very often is using his head to, you know, figure out puzzles and stuff like that. And the DC Comics creative team, I have to say, in the Silver Age, they came up with some creative ideas. And they had these limitations imposed upon them. But they used those limitations to force themselves to really use their imaginations to come up with some crazy stuff. And the Silver Age is like the age of crazy stuff happening in superhero comics. There's been nothing really like it since. Yeah. And so this is going to be a hell of a lot of fun to go through. And I enjoyed reading the SuperKey to Fort Superman once again. I guess we should be on our merry way, shouldn't we, Roger? We have other things we need to get to. I hope you have a great day.